Ask Reddit. Have you ever felt you don't know / have forgotten who you really are? That you've spent years just adapting to surroundings to make life easier and don't know what's the real you anymore? If so, how did you overcome this? I always see it as outgrowing my former self. It's time to improve, find purpose, and move into the next chapter. This often happens once I finish a major step in life, like graduating college, getting my first job, buying and improving my house to my satisfaction, etc. Once I put life on potential autopilot to all the things I thought I needed, I need something else to be a mission / journey. Edit. Loving the responses. Can't respond to everything, but if you need to reach out, send me a message, not chat. Can't guarantee I can solve your problems, but I can hopefully leave you with some motivation and positive outlook. I couldn't agree more with your sentiment. When you get to a point of maturity in life, where you can actually step outside yourself and view yourself and who you are based on the sum of influences you had on your life up to that point, you can begin to take control of your own narrative, free yourself from the bonds of the you defined by those prior experiences, and shape yourself into the person you want to become. That's the real you. Edit. Obligatory thanks for my first gold. I'll just say I'm in my own midlife crisis and just starting to figure some of this stuff out myself. I'd only add 2 things. 1. I never realized how limited my perspective was based on my upbringing in a single parent, blue collar household in the 1980s and everything that went along with that. And 2. It takes a lot of effort and pain to work through this stuff. A lot. Stop running from fear and being uncomfortable. You know what you have to do, and it eats at you inside. The obstacle is the way. Best wishes for each of you on your journey. There's probably no real you that exists across time. That's just a thing you built up when you were younger to give yourself a stable identity and core values. The you now is just as real as the you then. We all adapt to our surroundings and change to make our lives easier. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you're unhappy with your life now, you can adapt by changing. You need to believe that, and you probably know it, since it seems to be something you're afraid of. But this is the real you now, and you need to focus on the needs of that person, not some idealized phantom from the past. Live alone. It forces you to decide what you like to eat, how you want to eat, how you spend your downtime. It forces you to define who you are. Sometimes that's a fast food eating couch potato, but eventually that gets boring. Then is when you begin experimenting with other things, cooking, going out, asking yourself, what do I want to do? When you learn who you are, you become confident. Best advice I have is this: when we experience things, we make maps of what happened. We all have maps of our time in school, how people treat us, all of our experiences. We also make maps about other people. We make assumptions about others based on what we see or hear. We get maps from others about us too, especially friends and parents. What they tell us we are, what we think they see when they look at us, what we think they think about us, etc. People tend to focus on maps and label themselves, pigeonhole themselves into roles and what they think they should do, feel, or be based on the maps that they have. You are not a map. You are a 3D terrain of whatever beautiful biome you want to be. Don't stare at a map all day and forget to look up at what it really is. I stopped in my tracks, and instead of looking around for validation, I looked inside. There's a lot of people out there, all with a different opinion, and that's all it is, an opinion. They're all different, and you're never going to be good enough for all of them. The only person that has to live with you 24/7 is you. So the best thing you can do is be good enough for you. Be the person you think is a good person. Make decisions that feel right to you. Look in your heart and make decisions based on how that makes you feel. At the end of the day, when life is over, you will do the dying. Nobody is going to die for you, so you might as well be the one that does the living too. So I just stopped looking at other people's opinions and started finding the answers in my own heart. Doing things that didn't make me a bit uncomfortable, just to make others accept me. You weren't put on this earth to be like others. You were put here so you could be you. Find who you are. It's a lifelong journey, and I've found more of myself than I could ever hope for. I'm confident enough now that I don't care too much about what others think of the choices I make, since they're not the ones who have to live with the aftermath of those choices. I am. On top of that, if you behave a certain way, make certain choices based on what others want, but not really what you want, you'll attract more people who like those choices, more people who agree with the choices you didn't even agree with yourself. If you make the choices you want to make, do things your way, you'll attract more people who are like you, and you'll feel much better. This world is never going to become a better place if nobody is willing to stand out, if nobody is willing to change, if nobody is willing to be different regardless of the opinion of others. This is the end of my novel. Thank you for your patience. I had this feeling for all my life after puberty. There were these high ideals that I always maintained and couldn't live up to them. Mostly because they were about saving the world and unattainable things like that. I spent an absurd amount of my teenage years studying philosophy and religion, rather than dealing with teenage social issues like my peers. Ever since I was a kid, I had this goofy side though. When I wasn't pulling my hair out reading about semiotics, I would write silly stories to make people laugh. When I went to college, things changed. I began exhibiting some really dangerous behavior patterns, especially for someone with a huge conscience like myself. The line between my public and private life got larger. I began feeling I could no wrong. I don't really want to list some of the things I did here because of shame. But suffice it to say, you would have all hated college me. I'm going to skip to the end and just say this all got worse, until I woke up one day and all my lightheartedness was gone. I was working a high-paying meaningless job. I'd cheated on everyone I dated and thrown away every romantic relationship, some very painfully. My life had become all about money, sex, and status. The biggest epiphany of my life was realizing two things. 1. Everyone goes through some form of this. We all try on different faces. If we find one that doesn't fit, we still tend to cling to it, so that we don't have to change our current comfort level. This phase is normal and human. 2. I was bipolar. Manic. My post-puberty life was punctuated by periods of unbelievable energy and increasingly risky behavior. It put me on top. There were years where I had fans. I got up on stage and gave speeches and made people laugh and was the center of attention. And later it landed me in jail because the center cannot hold. But with that diagnosis I finally was able to figure out my history and why I could never live up to those ideals. Because grandiosity is a textbook manic symptom too. These days I don't push myself to do any more than love my family and enjoy the little things. I've lived more than most people do in a lifetime. I deserve a rest, at least for a little while. Sorry this is so long. The answer is that the normal cycle is to lose yourself for a little while and then find yourself again. Everyone has an existential crisis to some degree. You have to trust that this is normal and your real self is always there waiting for your return. How you return, that will be unique. A death in the family, jail, overdose, failed relationship, financial loss, you name it. Something has to touch you deeply, and it will happen. In the natural course of things we all take a big hit sooner or later. I don't like to generalize, but the 20s are a time when people tend to drift away from themselves. After that it's really anyone's guess when you'll come back. But since you're asking this question, I say it will be sooner than later for you. By accepting that we are all a product of our environment, and that's okay. We don't have to be some special individual snowflake who has come to be by some autonomous force. Who we are is ever changing. and largely dependent on context, on the people around us, and the society we exist in. Alan Watts talks a little about this in the book. We seldom realize, for example, that our most private thoughts and emotions are not actually our own. For we think in terms of languages and images which we did not invent, but which were given to us by society. Our social environment has this power, just because we do not exist apart from a society. Society is our extended mind and body. Yet the very society from which the individual is inseparable is using its whole irresistible force to persuade the individual that he is indeed separate. Society as we now know it is therefore playing a game with self-contradictory rules.